Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at the first four issues plus a couple of little short interstitial stories of Stephen Pellnat's ongoing series, Upstate. This is all self-published, independent artist doing it all himself. Obviously, it's set in upstate New York. It's a really well done, really awesome comic that I would like to get everyone going and supporting so we continue to see this. This fits firmly within my category of Rust Belt review type of comics where they're about small towns, suburban towns, people growing up in the burbs, people who move off to the big city, come home. It's all very down-to-earth storytelling, very much focused on character development and things like that. So exactly the type of comic book I really, wish I was better at, and the type of thing I'd like to do. Some of my favorite type of stuff to read. This is firmly in this category and a really well done version of that type of book too. So definitely want to share this and get people pumped about it and supporting Stephen Pellnat. The story is about this main character that we meet here, Ryan Essen. Ryan Essen, you meet her very young, and she grows up in front of the reader very quick. Over the next 3 pages, you get a montage of the whole life playing out, growing up, turning more into the goth kid, parents divorcing, all that kind of stuff going on. First sexual partner, moving out to the city, things falling apart, moving back. So you get that whole story very quickly, setting up for the fact that Ryan is going to be coming home. She's going to have to be moving home, moving out of the big city, and coming back to upstate to move back to her upbringing. And you get some very beautiful images along the way, showing her moving out of the city, across, taking that train trip and moving back into the wilderness of upstate New York, the snowy wilderness. And I always love books that give a real sense of place. This is obviously somewhere that Stephen Pellnat, I'm assuming, lived for a long time to have this kind of connection to it. But if not, grew up there, spent some time there, or has gone there and done research. But I would imagine this is a place that he grew up, because it has that kind of, it's more than just a picture. It has some of the taste and the smell of the place embedded in the drawing, I think. So I really appreciate that. As we follow Ryan coming back to her hometown in upstate, you start meeting family and friends that were part of her life before and are now going to be back again. So here you have Luke and Amanda and their child. They're obviously married. I believe Amanda was is a friend, yeah. And then I think Luke was the first boyfriend that Ryan had as well. But I could be wrong about that, but I think that's the Luke character there. So just really complex interpersonal relationships playing out, really good character development. Everyone's their own person in the book, all of that type of stuff. And so you just get to see these characters interacting. Another thing that I don't know why I didn't notice it on the first page, because it's there, but I was just so engrossed with the art and the story right out the gate that I didn't notice it till a little bit later on. But Stephen is obviously very influenced by Dave Sim, both as an artist and a storyteller and all of that, but especially as a letterist. I can tell there's just a lot of these really beautiful hand-on lettering, expressive balloons, the chilliness on the "come on," and then the explosive "what," and then the drunk with the hatching down at the bottom. There's some spots where you'll even get a word that's crossed out in the way that Dave would do it. Dave will put these little underline things through the word sometimes to emphasize it. So a lot of those tricks from what Dave developed in Cerebus show up in the lettering here. And different characters, Amanda's a much more expressive character, so her lettering's more likely to balloon and warp and twirl around to be expressive. So really love that. I think some of the letter forms are like a little shaky still, but as the more he does this, like Stephen Pellnat's going to be one of the greatest letters of all time if he gets to keep doing this. He'll be like he's starting with like Dave Sim as the input and doing it really well already. So he's only going to get better from there. A lot of just good montage scenes where Ryan is remembering things growing up, like here's the house as it exists now, coming home all beat up in the snow, window panes falling off, screens falling off. And this is the memory of what it was like as a kid in summer, and a lot of these ones without panel borders. So just really smart storytelling techniques all throughout. This is just as well done as comics can be, especially this is all, first issue. There are some fun formalisms in here as well. Stephen Pellnat is, like I said, someone who's looking at every aspect of comics, and like Dave Sim, trying to be good at all of them, trying to be a great writer on the writing terms, trying to be a great artist on the finished terms, trying to be a great letterer, trying to be a great formalist. So here you have Ryan rereading her childhood diary, and this little panel opens up in her head as she opens the book, and then it starts getting filled with like images of her as a kid, her remembering herself writing. I particularly love these two as like it opens up and then makes its way past her hairline and connects to her head, so it's more like coming out of her head. So just rereading that and being able to mentally go back to when you're sitting there writing it, I think that's a very beautiful, succinct visual way to show that. And get a lot of, you have where she's at now, where she used to be, plus the writing all in one panel, and it doesn't look cluttered. That's impressive comics making. Some more really awesome sense of place driving around upstate at night, particularly like this sequence here where the lights hit the cow. This almost has a Charles Burns-like vibe to it, just with the eeriness of it. Really like the snow technique covering the cows. That is what it would look like, but it also kind of makes them look see-through and adds to the eeriness of it because you don't see it against their white. So a lot of really cool stuff like that. Some also really cool effects here, again, with things blowing out of the head. This is something Stephen Pellnat does a couple of times where instead of a word balloon, it's like actually like fire shooting out of the head, and it gets more intense. And then there's some nice like fingerprint ink and hatching around here to create like a fade effect on the edge, which is really nice. So all of that I think is really, really beautiful. We also meet Nate here, who was like the high school hottie, but he's now like grown up and not so hot. We also meet the more important character on this page is Sam. Sam is a friend, but old friend, who is ex-military and an ex-MMA fighter that she's hanging out with. And so again, just one of those personal connections to the book. As someone who's obviously worked with Dave and a huge fan of him, especially as a letterer, and seeing that influence carried on is awesome. As someone who loves MMA and like trained it for a year and really sucked at it, but still loved it. The reference to MMA is exciting. So I just get the sense, in even just reading this first issue, that Stephen Pellnat is someone who shares a lot of like the same interests as me, the type of comics I like, even some of the non-comics things like MMA that I like. So I was even more engrossed in the series because of that, but I would have been engrossed nonetheless. In issue 2, we get some really nice stuff going on right out the gate here with Sam's coat, like some really nice tone work on. This issue I think is a little better produced as well. It's on a slicker paper, so the line art shows up really nice. Everything looks really crispy and clean on that. There are a lot of important events I'm skipping over because I want you to go buy this book, so I don't want to really give away all the major plot points, but there's definitely a lot of, in each story or at the end of each one, something major happens, a nice good big cliffhanger that happens that will lead you on into the next story. So even though this is like issue 1, issue 2, it's already very professional like idea of story structure and everything. Really liked this little use of the word balloon here. So again, some really great lettering and a comics formalism all at once where you had, dude, I saw Ryan there, and you let her drive because she was drunk. She shouldn't be drunk driving. And then there's like this little pie slice piece that says she, and then that allows for a third dimension where it looks like a cube on the box, and then you have truth on one side, lie on the other, where he's deciding, am I going to tell the truth or a lie? And you can see he chose lie because that connects down to the next word balloon that said, she lie kissed me. And I love that. I don't know if I've ever seen that trick before, and I think it's a really, really smart formalism. And you can see as I'm going through this book, I'm pointing out a number of these interesting formalisms throughout that all come together. Another one that's happening structural wise throughout this whole book is you'll see that there are these pages that are black all the way around and these pages that are white all the way around. So this book, this issue 2, not the whole book, issue 2 though has an almost memento-like structure where this happened in the past, this happens in the present, and the information from the two kind of come together to a meeting point at the end. I don't think it's quite like Memento where you actually meet in the middle of the story, but informationally they kind of meet. So very clever formal story writing structures. Then in terms of structuring the pages, you can see pages like this that are on the 9-panel grid all throughout, but then playing up the 9-panel grid within the panels themselves by having the bars, having some of these suggested tangents between panels. You're making a very sophisticated composition here just in terms of rhythm and grid and everything. So I think Stephen Pellnat is, beyond being great at handling characters' emotional developments and stuff, is also a very potent comics formalist and a very potent formalist as a writer as well. Like, you know, you could have all of these structures in a novel and it would be great. Here's another one of those like head explosion moments where there's an idea happening in the head. This one cracked me up because I was like, oh, he did it a second time. That's great. But this one looks even more like some moments that we had in Strange Death where Jack has all the fire blowing off of the back of her head. And since there's other Dave Sim-isms, I wonder if this is me seeing for the first time someone taking a technique that I did and then taking it further to an even better place, which, like, not being arrogant, not thinking that's where it is coming from, but it's the first time I've recognized something that I did somewhere else being used in a different way. And I know I'm constantly like, I'm going to steal that from someone and use it in a different way. And so if that is where that came from, you know, that's the coolest thing to see. If not, like, nobody, again, I don't want to sound arrogant, but with the Dave Sim lettering and the technique, it was hard not to put that together. So now, without telling exactly all what's happened, Ryan gets 6 months probation, and now, like, the collapse is happening all the way, right? Already have to be moved back in with mom and dad. Got all these other awful events. Now on probation for reasons we won't talk about. You'll see the Dave Sim lettering all throughout here, especially the sound effect of the gavel coming down. And yeah, Stephen is fantastic at all of that. There is even in one of the issues, I don't know which one it is, but Stephen says, like, one of the pieces of advice I have is if you ever want to be good at lettering, like, just trace some Dave Sim stuff and use it in your story and you'll have good dynamic lettering. So I know for a fact that that's where that part of it's coming from, at least. Then just looking at the dates of publication, I think this is where the two interstitial stories fit in. They basically go focus on other characters in the town. So this starts taking on, like, the Nicholas Offerman approach or the Alex Nall approach, where, you know, these stories right now is like Upstate potentially is just Ryan's story, but Upstate could also potentially be a series of books that then go to explore each other character's whole life, and that's exciting to me. I think that approach is very exciting. So here we're in summer of '86, and we're dealing more with a character named Robin, who turns out to be Ryan's mom. And that's what I'm saying, like, this world could grow forward and backwards, and that's a mode of storytelling. I'm definitely stealing from Nicholas Offerman. I'm definitely stealing from Alex Nall. I associate it with those those guys that I put in the Rust Belt review kind of category, is that there's so much about character that any incidental character could become a character. This is particularly wild because we're talking about Ryan's mom, Robin, dealing with a relative who's addicted to drugs. So there's some just absolutely horrendous artwork here, showing. No, I don't mean bad artwork, but the artwork's so good that it makes such a horrendous image of this drug addict like puking and shitting themselves on this bed and moaning and screaming. And I like also that this character is rendered as a monster with no nose or eyes and like these teeth on the outside. It's not literal. At first I was like, what the heck? I thought this was a down to earth like story, and all of a sudden we got something that looks like an alien monster. But I think what Stephen Pellnat was doing is just showing the absolute like decay of a body, how monstrous it could turn you, some of these drug addictions. And growing up in a place also that had a lot of drug abuse, meth addicts all over the place and stuff like that, I get that like they become almost this non-human zombie creature walking around your town, and he portrays that very well. This story is about a character named Robert, and this is just from the addiction group that Ryan's going to, because Ryan has a problem with drinking, which is kind of barely touched on that in the earlier book. I haven't really talked about that too much, but she's going to AA or a drug addiction group. So this is about a character in there who's both really reprehensible but also shows a sweet side at some point. So this empathetic storytelling that can really show the bad and good side of someone. Again, some more awesome lettering like here, where he has an awful interaction with someone and then he's riding away calling her a fucking cunt. Some really, again, beautiful drawing of landscape and scenery in there too. So those were both really, really fun and showed promise to me for what this could be as a potentially even lifelong project for this artist. I don't know how old Steven is, but the images I saw when I looked up on Instagram, it looks like Steven's a fairly young artist. So that also very much excites me, because if I look at like issue 1 of Cerebus and issue 300 of Cerebus, it's night and day. You see how much better Dave became. Well, also if you look at issue 1 of Cerebus, you see how good it was already. And I see in these issues someone who's already like 20 steps ahead of where Cerebus #1 was at. And so I really believe that if Stephen Pellnat is someone who eventually is able to make a money at this and make a living at this and spend all their time on this in the way Dave Sim is, that's the type of legendary creator you could be looking at, because so much is going so well in here already. And if that never happens, if this is something that comes out 1 a year or whatever, you're still going to see someone grow and produce excellent comics and eventually become masterful, I'm sure, because there's so much masterful stuff in here already. We learn more about the Luke character. You see him here as that he's a police officer. Really interesting kind of page setup here where Stephen Pellnat's playing with getting rid of the borders too. So a lot of experimentation with layout, things like that. Really enjoy this sequence here, just the composition here. This is this character who's trying to get, something's going wrong inside. He's bleeding, he's cut himself, and he's trying to get to these other characters but passing out. So this really awesome. And also obviously, he's on a oxygen tank and things. So really awesome composition and design there. Eventually Ryan gets a job as a writer, so that's good. She is back home now and it's not just a bum. She has a writer, which is kind of what she wanted to do. So she's very surprised about this, but is going to work hard at it. There's a sequence where you're flipping between 3 different characters, and Stephen Pellnat does a great job of like flipping through. Here we've got Luke, and there's all this shattered glass that they're picking up. And then on the next page, you get the visual of the shattered glass kind of turns into Ryan trying to write and all of these pages flowing down. And then that leads to a police chase where the police are chasing Amanda, and some cool things here where you can see her drunk trying to get the keys in the car. A lot of really interesting visual things going on. Also, as things go, there's stylistic and material experimentation. So that's another thing that you see a lot in early work of an artist, like early Cerebus. There was a lot of stylistic experimentation. And I really like seeing artists try out a new technique, seeing how they develop it, integrate it into their style. There's some more good stamping type of texture making here. Really, really beautiful stuff. Someone's expanding their vocabulary. They may keep that technique, they may not, they may find a new way to use it, and I find that all very exciting. This sequence is another one of those ones where it's a strange thing when you get a book and you're already liking it just on its writing, just on the art, the formalisms, all that kind of stuff, and then it has a number of things where you feel a connection to the characters personally, like the MMA thing, or in this, and so it just makes me like the book even more. In this sequence here, you have the old grandpa character who's on the oxygen and stuff, and he's telling Ryan, "You know what I miss, Ryan? Your old Nintendo. Your mom and me used to get high and play it after you went to bed." And she's like, "Oh my God, okay, wait here. I'm about to blow your mind." And then she brings a Nintendo Switch. And that's just hilarious because, while I was reading this, I was pretty high. And I had probably just finished playing. Me and Tori have got a subscription out, and then I don't know, it's like Nintendo Plus or something, and I could play it on the TV using the Switch controllers, and it lets me play old Game Boy games and old Nintendo games because I never had a TV growing up, so I never played anything more than a Game Boy. So anything past left, right, down, A, B is hard for me to play, and yeah, so I can't play new games, or they have to be very simple, slow games. And so I've been enjoying that recently. And so the combination of we used to get high and do that, and he's obviously smoking right now for the pain there, and just doing it on the Switch, and hey, I'm old and I can only deal with old Nintendo games. It's man, you really captured Steven, sir. I've never met you, we've never talked, but I felt really seen and judged, sir. But it made me appreciate the work more. It's that kind of stuff that's Sean always says it's well observed. It's it's well listened, it's well seen, it's someone who pays attention to the world, and I really appreciate that. The material play, the making play continues on in issue 4, where here you've got Stephen obviously has cut a mask of the title and then put the paper down and sprayed, and then I don't know how this was done, but maybe lift the paper up or let it drip or something underneath to get the drips on it. So getting the title in there with some experimental lettering play, again, just shows what you're looking at. And you can also see in the art, you're looking at someone art-wise who's doing something that's as well observed and expressive as someone like Jaime Hernandez with the poses, but also then more detailed, not so stripped down. You've got someone who's writing the line a little bit more realistically, but all of that same great cartooning. In the writing, there's also some really well observed moments in the writing. In this sequence, you have Ryan talking to different people on the phone, and as she talks to different people, she'll code switch. She'll start using different types of language that she's not using in other sequences, and I find that really interesting. So you have this moment here where she's talking to Amanda, and obviously they have their codes that they used, their verbal habits that they used to use in 2005 when they were teenagers, and so it's hey, Mandersnatch, what up? So Ryan is still stuck in that high school mindset, and then Amanda's hi. Oh, hey, listen, I completely forgot to call you back the other day. My bad. Cool. Can you come over? Luke just left with LJ, and I'm really going through something here. Oh, yeah, totally. Here's the thing, though. I'm in Albany, and I've had a few drinks. And also the just switching back and forth between the person who hasn't grown up and the person who has grown up. What else is new? Nothing. Yeah, that's fine. Just let me know when you leave. That's also really well handled. And then you get a flashback sequence to where Amanda and Ryan were like going to be going to an Upstate hardcore show. And then this is fun because I later today, the day I'm recording this, actually I'm going to be talking to Hunter Delaney about his history of hardcore. And obviously the history of hardcore is a very upstate New York, Massachusetts type of Washington, D.C., Massachusetts, New York. And so having them in 2005 going to this wild, unhinged, like mildly, this guy has an X on his arm. They even mentioned straight edge, I think. So that's another one of those fun moments of connection. Like, I love heavy music. I like hardcore music. That's kind of what I grew up on. So it's just another one of those things where it's like, yeah, you know, like I would never be in the mosh pit in the show, but I've been to shows like that. Love it. And it feels very authentic. I think that's probably a lot of this Rust Belt review stuff that I like so much that I don't. It's not a genre, but it is like a category that I have on my shelves because of the Sean Knickerbocker's Rust Belt review. I feel like those people are doing for me what Love and Rockets must have done for a lot of people when it was originally coming out, where it felt very authentic and relatable to them. Some fun stuff here where there's some actual guitar tab going on. So every issue has multiple moments of experimentation in multiple levels. Experimenting formally in page layout, experimenting in story structure, experimenting in lettering, experimenting in material application, experimenting in layout. Lots of really good stuff. Talking about experimenting with layout, there's a really cool structure going on in this page where I've sketched it here. There's a diamond on the bottom, and then there's another half diamond on cross. So you get like this diamond cross pattern throughout the page. That's really nice. And then also a really nice moment here where there's like a tangent headed down. This seems very intentional. So the like sorrow and hanging of the head of the character, the window in the next panel makes that line longer, and so it makes that hanging head look more depressed and the hunchback look more hunched. I think if you had just seen this much of it, it wouldn't be as sad of an image as if you saw that much of it. So really also very fine-tuned, subtle decision making in almost every panel in the comic. You know, there's everything in here is firing on all guns, is pushing itself on all guns, is experimenting on all metrics. I just really think this is superb work, and this is only the first 4 issues. Like, that's why I keep going. I mean, obviously the Dave Sim comparison because of the lettering, but I can keep coming back to that also and saying, like, look, when we're seeing art like this, we're judging it for what it is now, which is already great, but it's also behooves us sometimes, I think, to be like, man, if this person's this good by issue 1 and they're experimenting still, they're playing, they're improving, where's this going to go? And those are the artists that excite me the most. This is some of the type of comics that excite me the most right now. And so Stephen Pellnat is someone that I really, really want to like push people. You know, I do a lot of things on here where I say, well, this is highly recommended, but then there's other where I go like, please go support this artist, because we're all going to benefit from Stephen Pellnat being to continue to do this as long as possible. The medium will benefit. So please go support this great artist and support our great medium. Help it grow. Help it get even better. Comics is in a golden age right now, and the more support we put at it, the better it will be. House on Fire by Matt Battaglia is a just gorgeous book where Matt's kind of making an emotional response to the years of COVID and wrapping that into a sci-fi dystopian future that really the sci-fi dystopian's backgrounded, and you're focused on the emotional journey of 2 characters in a really beautiful way. And then that's enhanced by Matt's like really awesome, loose, kind of Paul Popish dry brush work. And then Sean and Matt have worked to get this second kind of orange spot color in there that's going to look really, really beautiful, and has allowed Matt to use his dry brush technique to add tone to the thing too. So with Sean's production technique, this is going to be a gorgeous book with a lot of heart.